And now it is my joy to welcome Reverend Paul Johnson back to us for another year and to speak to us a little bit about the water communion.
Well, thank you very much, Beth, and thank you, and Phyllis and Cindy and all who have worked to put this service together. I really appreciate it. Look forward to being with all of you next week in person, and I'll come on Saturday morning, as has been our custom. And 11 o'clock, we'll start a series that I hope you'll join me for, a wisdom circle. Circles have sort of been reintroduced and reinvigorated in recent years as ways to share dreams and personal social concerns and deeply explore things that have meaning in our lives. And so I'll be introducing a question for people to share their wisdom and life experience. And there's so much that we can learn from each other. I think the first question is, what is something that you're proud of? This can be something you receive recognition for, or something that no one else knows about except you. Please do not be modest. But we'll start with that after a check-in for everybody, and maybe handle 2 questions each time and in ensuing months. The next one, I think, will be, what was a particular joyful time in your life? And what has this meant to you in terms of life wisdom? But as I think of our congregation, we have millennia of human experience that we can learn from and be inspired by. And I hope you'll join me for that at 11 o'clock. And I'll have my regular office hours from 1 to 4 on Monday. And Larry Abdullah tells me that he's putting together a luncheon for the following Tuesday. So let's be alert to that in the newsletter. Throughout the country, it's very common for Unitarian Universalist congregations to conduct a water ceremony as part of an ingathering service at the beginning of the new congregational year. I first came across this when I went to Princeton, New Jersey in the 1990s, and have taken part in the early 1990s, and have taken part in a water ceremony every year since. But I've often wondered, how did this tradition get started? I have known for a long time that our traditions of the flaming chalice and the flower communion go back to our relationship with Unitarians in Czechoslovakia in the 1930s and 40s. And it's only recently that I learned the full story behind our water ceremony or water communion. So the story begins in 1975 when Lucille Shook Longview of our congregation in Lexington, Massachusetts, served as a Unitarian Universalist representative to the United Nations Women's Year Assembly in Mexico City. And she returned convinced that her beloved denomination was not immune to the perpetuation of oppressive sexism. And so she gathered support in her own congregation, and they authored what was to become the Women and Religion Resolution, which eventually was passed by our UU General Assembly in 1977. And it called for a close look at the sexism inherent in religious literature and institutions, starting with the UUA. So a national committee was formed, and committees were formed in districts to look at this issue. And these groups came up with the idea that our purposes and principles had to be amended to do away with gender-specific language, all male, and that there was nothing there really to call for the care of Mother Earth as a priority. So in 1981, at General Assembly, a study process to review the principles was set up. And this was a remarkable process. I remember my congregation at the time, back in Maryland, we we took part, and we had discussion groups and so forth to send our suggestions into the National Committee. And in 1985, our purposes and principles were redone in terms of what we have today, including our respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we're a part, and of course, no more male gender language was included. Over the years, there were many women and religion convocations as part of this process. And in 1981 was held in East Lansing, Michigan, and it was entitled Coming Home Like Rivers to the Sea. And the service was put together by the aforementioned Lucille Shook Longview and Carolyn McDade, who is a composer of the UU hymn Spirit of Life, which is a favorite of so many of us. Carol and I, just a couple weeks after we were married, we took part in a Lake Geneva, Wisconsin assembly where she was the worship leader. And what a wonderful experience that was to get to experience worship with her and to get to know her way back in 1978. But they said about the service afterwards, the water ceremony became the central part of our service that broke with tradition in significant ways. It was created by lay women who had long been silent in the pews. The ritual space was also made sacred by the women themselves. We gathered to worship in a way authentic and liberating to us, not as in a church, but in a semicircle around a large common earthen bowl. It was a ritual of women's being connected by a universal symbol, water, a ritual of women being connected to the totality of life. So participants, I don't know if every participant or just a number of participants have been asked to bring water to the service that had special meaning to them. And the waters were commingled as the women shared. And after the service was over, women were encouraged to take some of that water home with them, maybe to empty out a perfume or cosmetic container of some kind or something else, to bring some of this water home, to remind them of their shared power and their influence. So that's how it began, and it gradually spread across the continent. Women's place in the denomination increased in many, many ways, but especially in professional ministry. At the time, there were very few women ministers. I believe there was probably just you could number them on two hands of total women ministers in our denomination. And now I think they are approaching, if not past the halfway mark in terms of being the majority of our ministers. What a significant change that has been. But the ceremony has generally marked the beginning of a new congregational year. And it reminds me, when I was a kid growing up in an evangelical Christian church, we had Rally Day the Sunday after Labor Day. And we'd have a special pre-Sunday school class, musical offering or a skit or something. And then we would go to meet our new Sunday school teacher. And often, of course, there were some new students to meet in our new class. So it was a very special Sunday, but it kind of reminds me in a way of the tradition we've established. But it represents a new beginning, which we all share, bringing our waters of experience. Some people share what they have experienced or what they've learned during the summer and bring home with them to share in the ensuing year. Learning or a meaningful experience that they've had. And I certainly have had a profound, meaningful experience to share, and we'll pour water next week in representation of this. But last year, in the last June, at the last day of General Assembly, I experienced a degradation in my sight, which really bothered me. And I went to an emergency room and was determined it was not a retinal tear or something to do with the retina. And I was told I could wait till I got home in a day to go to my ophthalmologist. Well, when I went to my ophthalmologist, she diagnosed me as having age-related macular degeneration, and right away she gave me the Eylea medicine injected right into the eye. That sounds like a kind of a harrowing thing, and of course it is at first to have a needle injected in your eye. But you know, my sight improved, and I was able to come to our service on July 4th weekend, and my sight was good enough that I could read my manuscript, and I could navigate quite well. And you know, we had our sharing circle after the service as well, and I talked to a new attendant about our way in faith, you know, that day. But then the next week, I had inflammation of my iris, which was terribly painful. And then I had a retinal bleed, which really restricted my sight. In fact, I couldn't read. I had to have, when we were out and about, I'd have to take Carol by the hand. And it was a very, very, you know, significant, harrowing time. And I only have one eye, left eye. That's operative. So I was in great distress. And then they diagnosed me with an infection and started using high doses of prednisone to deal with this, but it wasn't effective. And I was in deep, deep despair and anxiety. But then Dr. Haddock, a wonderful retinologist with University of Miami, which has a branch near West Palm, said, I believe that may be a fungal infection. And so he treated me with an injection in the eye with miconazole and antifungal, and put me on oral antifungals, and with visits every week or 2 times a week. He watched the slow progress of my eye. Over time, the debris from the bleed went to the bottom, slunk to the bottom of my eye, and was eventually absorbed. It's almost all gone now. And the terrible floaters, which were clouding my vision, have gotten much better. I can read now quite well. I'm going to get an update on my glasses pretty soon when you know, all the debris is gone. And my doctor tells me that the infection is almost totally gone away. So the only thing I'm left with is the residue of anxiety, which is still very, very pressing on me. And I'm getting help for that. So as I pour my water in, it's going to be in gratitude for, first of all, my wife, Carol. Oh, she's been such a wonderful help and support during this critical time where I have been more fearful than at any other time in my life. And also Dr. Haddock, this wonderful retinologist who has cared for me so well. So that's my experience. I hope that that none of you have had quite so harrowing experience over the summer, and that it's been one that hasn't had these fearful experiences. But that's what I wanted to share with you today. My gratitude that my vision is quite good and much improved. So I look forward then to being with you next week when we actually pour the water in and do our sharings in a different way than today. But I want with all of you to celebrate with water the source and sustenance of all life, our mingled wisdom, our gratitude, our influence and power, as we celebrate the beginning of a new congregational year together, where we celebrate, of course, the blending of the strands as well of the past as well as the present. I remember in Princeton that after the service, we would take the water that people had shared and we bring it out to our memorial garden. And in a ceremony, we would pour the water in the memorial garden where so many of the ashes of departed from our congregation were held, and thank them and recognize them, and even name some of the people who had meant so much to our past as we blend past and present together in a unique way. So this coming year, may we reach out for greater meaning and more profound awareness of our common religious heritage and our commitment to it. So we ask the blessings of life upon us at this new beginning, this fresh start. May we be blessed with compassion and understanding among ourselves and our wider community. And may we experience in a renewed way zest for living. So may it be. Amen.